Tell the audience how cool you are.
That's a strong exaggeration.
Music. Roll the music.
What we're seeing as we move into this new phase.
Not only is he all energy,
Building on our franchise, Snooze Mattress.
it's the passion that he
All right, we are live with the Dream Big podcast, where we travel around to look for the biggest dreamers in the world to hear a little bit more about their story. And today I couldn't be more excited about a guy that literally, physically, mentally, he is a big dreamer on and off of the off of work. So Dr. Jeffrey Durmer, thank you and welcome today to the Dream Big podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy right here, and I think I could talk for hours and hours about this guy, but world-renowned sleep psychiatrist and neurologist, specializes in sleep medicine and circadian neurobiology. You've been featured on CNN. We saw you on New York Times, Men's Health magazine. You collaborated with multiple international clinics to diagnose and treat restless leg syndrome?
Yeah, there's a few of those things. I'm not a psychiatrist, though. So
Psychologist.
I'm actually a neurologist. So
Neurologist.
we kind of cover
Where
the
did I pick that
spectrum
at?
there. Yeah, but we get the same board from neurology and psychiatry. It's all okay. It's all good. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. And you are the Olympic coach for sleep.
Yeah, I was the Olympic weightlifting team's sleep and circadian neurobiologist. So basically, I helped the coaches and the athletes in all of the different levels of weightlifting, but also for the Tokyo Olympics to improve their performance and to improve their recovery and help them schedule their sleep in a way that would also schedule their training programs, their eating programs. So I kind of orchestrated the lives of Olympic athletes for a few months and then for a few years before that.
Man, you got quite a story to tell, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. We are here at the DNVR bar, the DNVR studio, so big shout out to those guys. But I would say if there's a guy that's pretty passionate about sleep, it's yourself. Somebody that's probably the world's most knowledgeable man we have sitting right here today. So
I wouldn't say most knowledgeable, but I certainly put a lot of effort into this, and it's sort of what I do. Well, that's my job.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast today. I know you're a busy man. So let's just start. Will you tell me your story? Tell me
my story. Wow.
Yeah. Let's start with that question.
I think my story starts when we're talking about sleep in particular. It started when I was doing my medical and PhD degrees back at the University of Pennsylvania. I really was interested in neuroanatomy, and being a neurosurgeon is what I was headed towards. In the midst of that, I was doing basic science and bench research in animal models of the visual orienting system, which is basically how do you know to look at something? How do you know eyes are looking at you? And while I was looking at these different subcortical visual systems in the brains of cats, I kind of stumbled across this association with another laboratory while at University of Pennsylvania that was doing a very similar set of experiments with the same models that I was using, but looking at cats at night and the effect of some of the manipulations we were all doing for visual orienting in the daytime. They were actually doing some very similar work and looking at the effect on REM sleep. And I never knew about REM sleep and the nuclei and the parts of the neuroanatomy associated with sleep itself, because I was really focused on daytime function as a doctor and a scientist. And lo and behold, it turned out that a lot of those relationships in terms of what's happening in the brain in the daytime actually are replicated at night. And a lot of the same structures do different things at night. So I started to get really interested in the basic science of sleep. And I kind of stumbled into it, the clinical side, really from the science side. And while I was at Penn, I got to work with some of the world's leading researchers in both sleep and other areas of neuroscience where I did my PhD. And that led to me really getting interested in bringing this great science of sleep and circadian neurobiology directly into clinical applications. So one of the things as an MD PhD we're pounded into us is that we are bench to bedside. So whatever we start to discover on the bench side in our research or observations we make in clinic and bring to the bench, these are things we want to translate back into populations for the benefit of everybody out there. The the country put a lot of money into people like me to actually do that kind of studying and help me get through my grad school and everything. So what we're trying to do is bring the best of science into practice. I found that sleep was an area that really there was this great wealth of knowledge that we've had for like at least 100 or so years of science, but very little in terms of clinical applications. In fact, clinical sleep medicine itself really is one of the newest specialties that we have. It's 1970s is when we first started treating people for sleep disorders and having sleep disordered clinical fields. And it started at Stanford, University of Chicago, major academic universities. I happened to come out of one of those at Penn, and it was really amazing to me how little we were actually applying in the medical world and in the health world related to sleep, which is basically a third of your life.
Right.
So we're spending all this time sleeping, and we know a lot about the science behind it, not everything, of course, and we're not applying it in our regular day-to-day health prevention strategies, and we're not providing, these very classic understandings of sleep that we have in the science realm to our clinicians. So a lot of my friends and colleagues in the medical realm, in the neurology realm, just don't know much about sleep because we weren't training our medical field, our medical doctors with the understanding of sleep science. I mean, literally, I taught medical school for a number of years, 2 hours in your entire career medical school to teach you about sleep. 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that drove me into this really much more bringing the science into practice. So, not just to the practice of medicine, which I definitely am involved in, but also bringing the practice into the lives of people so that we can actually talk about the performance of athletes or the performance of a CEO or somebody who's doing air traffic control or somebody that is driving a truck. These are incredibly important positions. All of us have important roles to play in the big field of life, but sleep is something we all have in common. So why don't we bring out some of these basic scientific ideas to the rest of the population? And that's what I've been doing for the last almost 20 years now.
I love it. Yeah, and I mean, as you know, we're in the mattress business, and we were actually in the sleep business. I mean, we are very proud that we do things differently. I mean, from wearing pajamas to having Mayo Clinic technology to making sure we're custom fitting people to mattresses to customized pillows. We do a lot of different things, but as you said, I mean, people don't realize. I mean, the 4 essentials to life is water, food, air, and sleep. And sleep is one of those things that we don't always take seriously, that people think they can get away with 2 hours. So truly, how important is sleep? Yeah,
good question. There's a lot of little books written about these things, right?
Absolutely.
So Why Do We Sleep? Matthew Walker, a number of great books out there. Arianna Huffington actually has a book, about the effect of sleep on business and business culture. I think it's really important for people to recognize, as you said, there are some basic fundamentals. And Maslow's pyramid, I mean, we talk about that. It's not necessarily scientifically super valid, but it's an incredibly good construct. You think about the bottom of the pyramid. What's at the bottom? What creates the foundation for everything else in your life that you want to do? Those basic constructs are things that your mother tells you about that you do with your kids, which is eating a good diet, being active, both physically and mentally, and sleeping. Those are sort of the fundamentals. Of course, clothes and having, a place to get out of the Denver snow, which is where we are, is a good thing too.
Right.
But, for you as a human, the fundamental physiologic changes that occur at night support your daytime function. So I look at sleep as sort of in a different way. Sleep is actually something you do to prepare for the next day. It's not the end of your day. We often look at sleep as what you do when you're exhausted and it's the end of Tuesday, but actually it's the beginning of Wednesday. Because whatever you're going to do on Wednesday is completely dependent on the sleep you got Tuesday night.
Absolutely.
So we start to change change the idea, change the concept of sleep into a preparation for the day, not necessarily the end of a day. Once you make that cognitive switch, and a lot of athletes I work with have, you start to recognize sleep as a value. It's actually a power. And if you use it properly, like Arianna Huffington talks about for business, you see impacts. You see economic impacts. You see yourself doing better. You see yourself losing weight. You see yourself performing at your best. And that's something that any group that wants to perform well really is learning about. Luckily, our culture is quick in terms of things changing culturally, not necessarily in medical sense. We do things slowly in medicine, and it's for good reason. But culturally, we're dynamic, right? We're a very dynamic culture. Things change. We have influences from all these different thoughts. One of the things that I think was a negative influence, we'll say, on our culture was, if you look back to the 1960s, stores were open at 9 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, and they closed at 6 or 7 or 9 o'clock at night. They were not open 24/7. And in fact, there were companies that we now know today, like 7-Eleven, just bringing that up as a name because the name was predictive of when it was open. 7 a.m., closed at 11 p.m. When I was a kid, my parents and my grandparents were like, that'll never do what that company's going under. That's a crazy idea. Who gets up at 7 in the morning to go shopping and then is up at 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock at night shopping? For them, in their culture, they were getting 8 hours of sleep on average. That was the culture in the 1960s. What we wind forward now 20 years, the average cultural impact of sleep is completely different. People only get 6.2 hours a night for sleep on average in the US. Really? So in 60 years, we've had a 2-hour reduction in just average duration of sleep in this country for adults. That's a huge impact.
Huge.
And we have 24/7 7-Elevens. They're not 7 to 11 anymore.
Right.
And that change, that 24/7 culture, has really had a significantly negative impact on our ability to be healthy, our position in the world. Even though we think of that as a powerful tool that we can be around the 24/7, we're actually driving down our efficiency. And there are a number of academic papers about this that show just because you can do things 24/7 doesn't mean you're getting the return of that investment. In fact, there's a diminishing return, both in terms of the cost of your workforce, the accidents that are created, the healthcare impact that it has over time. And that's actually something that we now have a sense of. And the CDC has recognized this, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And since the 2020 Healthy People and now 2030 Healthy People focus, which provides the country with sort of, these are the major foci for public health. In both of those, the CDC has called out sleep deprivation as a major epidemic within the United States culture, with this 2/3 of adolescents not getting enough sleep on a night-to-night basis, 1/3 of adults not getting enough sleep on a night-to-night basis. Think about that.
Yeah.
1/3, 2/3 of a population being affected by something that is a health driver. That's if you think about our pandemic right now with COVID-19, it's much, much more prevalent than that. Yeah. And yet we don't talk about it in the same breath. And it leads to some incredibly bad outcomes. Heart failure, hypertension, any kind of depression, mental health problems that we've been saddled with, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and then a whole host of immune deficiencies and immune dysfunctions. We just know that, just getting a vaccine, if you're sleep deprived and get a vaccine, it doesn't work as well.
Really?
Yeah. So you can get the flu vaccine and be sleep deprived, and it will not create a great immune response. Same thing with your COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 vaccines. So we have to start treating sleep, and I think our culture now is dynamic enough that we're learning from cultural icons like Arian Huffington and others. Shaquille O'Neal came out, about a decade ago and talked about using positive airway pressure, CPAP, for his sleep apnea, and he posted it up online with his wife dancing with his CPAP machine with Harvard University in the background, saying,
hilarious.
"Yeah, we've treated his apnea," and that led to sort of a normalization, a re-normalization of sleep disorders. That it's something that's very common. 25% of the population has the potential of having sleep apnea. Actually, that's a huge number of people, and it goes untreated in 80% of the folks out there that have it. 80% of people with sleep apnea don't have it treated, don't even have it recognized. So there's a real public health need that we have in the medical realm and in the health realm to get sleep recognized for what it really is, which is that recovery state that you have to have on a day-to-day basis to stay healthy, effective, productive, and safe. I mean, this is national. We're now talking about it in terms of our national security. They talk about climate change as part of our national security. we're actually talking about sleep deprivation as part of our national security, because if you look at who is behind everything, who's running the country, who's keeping us safe, these are sleep deprived people. And that's a big problem. So we have to address the reality that we've created for ourselves, which is we can't be 24/7. We need to recover. We need to prioritize sleep as a component of our existence here on Earth, because it's biological. It's not just a behavior that you can turn on and off. It's like thirst or hunger, and like you said before.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I mean, you've coached people from every aspect, and you do the best athletes in the entire world. So the simple question of how much sleep does the human body need?
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, how much do we need? What is sleep to survive? What is too much? What is not enough? What is...
It's a complicated question because sleep sounds very monolithic. It's one word. It is not one thing. That's one of the areas that I teach to my fellows and residents, that sleep itself, if you break it down, even in the neuroscientific sense, it's a very complex behavior. It's a very complex physiologic event, and it happens every day. Yeah. So one of the things I try to do is break it down in a way that makes it understandable. First step is to understand that the amount of sleep, duration of sleep, is just one. It's one aspect of sleep. It's one component. There are at least two more, and that is sleep timing, when you sleep, and sleep quality. How good was the sleep? Even though you got a lot of it and you got it at the right time of day, how good was your sleep? So those three aspects, duration, timing, and quality, are a good way for everybody to think about their sleep. Just because you get 8 hours, which is the recommended amount of sleep for an adult, between 7 and 9, average 8, did you feel good? Did you wake up refreshed? Did it seem to be enough sleep for you? Are you a 7-hour sleeper? Are you a 9-hour sleeper? Where is your sleep duration? That's the easiest one. And we have a lot of things like rings and watches that can tell us you slept the amount that you should have slept. That's only one aspect. The second, it's actually the most well-known and well-studied. We do know if you sleep less than 7 hours, if you're in that 6+ or under 6 hours, you have a much higher risk of cardiovascular disease, of metabolic disease, of mental health issues, as well as immune deficiencies and immune response problems. So we know that. That's actually well versed in the research. The other thing we know is that the time of day you sleep is something that's predicted by your own internal clock called your circadian clock, your circadian rhythm. Circadian means around the 24-hour day. So you have a little clock in your hypothalamus, in the front of your hypothalamus, that actually is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's above the chiasm, which is the crossing of the optic nerves. That little nucleus gets direct visual input from the eyes on an ongoing basis about the luminosity, how much light is there. And based on light, you actually activate the structures in the brain and the body that create wakefulness. At the same time, you shut off sleep and sleep structures that are also in the brain and the body. So that circadian rhythm in the SCN, suprachiasmatic nucleus, actually has its own free running rhythm. So your rhythm and my rhythm are not exactly the same. They're around 24 hours, but experiments have been done where folks have been put in caves for a whole month. This is before IRBs. This is way back in the early 1900s, before human subjects and that sort of stuff was a big issue. But it was done academically and actually done in Kentucky in the Mammoth Cave. And the experimenters in that research actually kept medical students, I think it was, in those caves for almost a month. And each one of the caves was designed to have a light and a bed and its own room. And they turned the light off and on whenever you thought it was daytime. So based on your internal mechanism of wake and sleep, they turned the light on and recorded that light on, and then turned the light off when it's time for bed. You had food and people interacting with you during the time that you were awake, and then sleeping, you were sleeping. And what they found is that on average, people's average circadian 24-hour rhythm is about 24.6 hours. So we're a little longer than 24 hours. Some people were much shorter than that. We're around 23 point something hours. Some were longer, 25 hours. So there's this average that's a little longer than 24 hours in humans. So how do we stay on a 24-hour cycle? Well, that's that light effect. Every morning when you open your eyes, the SCN gets that light and shuts off sleep and turns on wake. So you can shorten your 24 cycle to that 24 hours, 24.6 to 24. That timing, though, is your timing, unique to you. So your natural tendency could be to have a very delay or long cycle, which means you wake up much later than other people, like an adolescent or high schooler kid, who then goes to sleep really late because their natural rhythm has been extended by puberty. And that extension, that delay, we call in circadian neurobiology, actually predicts that you're going to be more of a night owl. And some people in families are more night owls. And there are others that are morning larks who have shorter rhythms, who are more wake up in the morning and go to bed early. So we have this dichotomy. Some people are towards this delay, some people are towards this advance. And the jobs they pick oftentimes reflect that actual effect. You see a lot of artists who are delayed. You'll see a lot of lawmakers and politicians who are advanced. So a lot of the creative minds in the cultures are often delayed, and they're scientists and people of that ilk. And then the people who tend to run society are much more oriented towards the early morning. So the morning bird gets the worm concept.
Yeah.
Those are the people that run society in many cases. And then the folks who are sort of the inventors and the folks with the artistic talent tend to be not in that same category.
Yeah.
So the timing of your sleep is one of these things that predicts the effectiveness of your sleep. If you sleep off of your natural circadian rhythm, so if you're a morning, say you're a delayed sleep phase person, you get up, normally you feel like you should be getting up at 10 o'clock and you go to bed at 1 or 2. That's your natural rhythm. But you have a job that starts at 7 o'clock. Every day you're having to get up at a time that's against your natural rhythm, and you're not falling asleep usually until 1 or 2, so you're not getting enough sleep. So timing of sleep is another major part of the effectiveness it has for us. And then if you look at shift work, which almost 20% of our population is working under, medical folks, fire, police, nurses, working in all different aspects, that's another group of people that are at much higher risk of health conditions, at cardiovascular disease, obesity, because of this shift that they have to do in their circadian rhythm. Your biology doesn't change.
Yeah.
The environment is what's changing you. So timing's the second one. The third one is quality. You can kind of get a hold of timing and duration yourself. You can kind of get a sense of those for yourself and even use your watch or your ring or whatever to maintain those. But quality is a harder one to determine. And it's more about going through the natural cycles that sleep is about. And we have these things called REM, rapid eye movement, and non-REM cycles that occur every night. We usually go through 3 to 5 of these cycles every night. And by going through those cycles, you actually are doing things biologically, physiologically, that you need for the next day. One of the things that we know from deep non-REM sleep in particular is that you make growth hormone, which is very important to athletes and very important to all of us, but even more so for those that are doing workouts that are to stimulate growth hormone, to actually build muscle and to repair nervous tissue and different parts of the body. You don't get that growth hormone if you don't get that deep non-REM sleep. So one of the things that we talk about with our athletes is the quality of your sleep is more important actually than the other two aspects. We need to make sure your quality's good. So one of the things that we often do is we test people, and this is where the sleep medicine, the MD side of the world actually works, and that is doing things like polysomnography, testing people's sleep to see if they're going through these stages properly. If there are other things physiologically interrupting those stages, like sleep disordered breathing, which affects about a quarter of the population, apnea, airway closes off, and your brain activates as if you're having a choking event, and it drives your sympathetic nervous system to open the airway, but it also drives up blood sugar, which makes insulin secretion in the middle of the night when you shouldn't have any of that. So you can get a sense that interruptions in that natural cycle, whether it's due to breathing problems, restless legs and kicking, or parasomnias and movements at night, all of these things, or just insomnia, actually, which is the most common sleep disorder. Those sorts of things interrupt the cycles of your sleep, not just the duration and the timing of your sleep. So we really have to treat quality issues medically oftentimes, and then we see duration and timing issues often as a second behavioral aspect that we have to implement. So, sleep medicine is a very complex sport.
For sure.
We have medical folks, we have psychology and psychological folks. So we have two arms of sleep medicine, behavioral sleep medicine and medical sleep medicine. And those two arms are different groups. They're different professionals, PhDs in psychology and clinical psychologists, and nurses who are advanced practice nurses doing things like cognitive behavioral therapy, and licensed social workers, and then medical folks. And medical folks and these other groups often don't work together.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, in my work, in my company's work,
Yeah.
we've actually created this connection. Our company is called Knox Health. It's one of the largest population sleep health companies. And we created it really so that we could bring together on a telemedicine platform behavioral and medical components to treat these quality as well as behavioral duration and timing issues. So it's really, you got to take the whole picture into mind when you want to really affect change in sleep. So that's how I approach sleep. It's a little bit more complicated than just the monolith. My sleep is not good.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, let's talk about that. Tell me more. Have a seat on the couch. It's going to take a little while to unwrap that.
Well, let's just say for the average human out there, I mean, a lot of things that we talk about is like the things that you can control is, a consistent schedule, light in the room, sometimes white noises. Nowadays, like you said, technology out there to actually show you REM sleep. And like we have sleep trackers inside of there. I don't know how 100% accurate they are, but they're pretty good. I mean, from what we see, but I don't know. You're right. I mean, at least it's telling you something, and it's giving you something scalable to look at and to try to get better at. But I mean, from the average person out there, what's a cheat code to getting a little bit more sleep if they couldn't get to you right away? Obviously, you're a pretty hard guy to get to instead of across the couch from. So
we're hopefully getting easier to get to with internet. So
absolutely.
I mean, that's the whole reason
stuff
we
like
built
this.
the platform so we can do this in a larger scale. We do it all through the internet. We all do everything we do is telebased. Our doctors are telebased.
Yeah,
that's the world we're in now, and that's what we do as a company. So really scaling that, I think, is it's coming. That's part of the culture. We're starting to get to telemedicine where you can get the specialty care that you probably don't have access to because it lives in an ivory tower someplace in a big city you don't live in. That's something that's changing. One of the aspects of us providing sort of an understanding about sleep is that I guess as the culture starts to learn more, and people start thinking about the amount of sleep they get as a first step into this. The CDC has requirements out there. There's all kinds of stuff on the internet about it. You can start to use your ring, use your watch, use the things that you have available to see if you're within what we consider the norms, and realize that, the reason we have norms is because we have huge amounts of data, thousands and thousands and millions of people behind that. And if you're sleeping less than 6 hours and you think that's normal, take a look back at what else is happening in your life. Are you healthy? Are you finding that your day-to-day function is good? Are you feeling depressed? Are you noticing other things in your life? Because sleep itself, just getting like a watch to tell you how much REM or non-REM, which honestly they're not accurate, but it's data. That data itself is really meant to help drive your thinking and get you aware. Awareness is what all of these things are about. If you start to see that 6 hours is not enough because you're still feeling sleepy in the daytime, or you're having issues related to like getting to bed at the right time, using a television in your bedroom. Those are the sorts of things that you can affect right away. And the things I tell people are pretty common. We all know about these things. Like, it's often called sleep hygiene. But some of the things that you may not be aware of is just the concept of where you sleep. Think about your bedroom, first of all. Go in your bedroom sometime and just look around. What's in that bedroom? Because what I can tell you is that most people in their bedroom, there's a whole bunch of entertainment in their bedroom. It's like almost a hotel room. And hotels, by the way, worst places to sleep because the television's right there. The first thing I ask all of my patients and others that are interested in improving their sleep is to take those things out of your bedroom. In fact, change the concept of your bedroom. Just like I said before about sleep, change the concept about sleep. It's actually about preparing for the next day, not the end of the day. Look at your bedroom as what I like to call a sleep sanctuary. It is not a bedroom. It's a place
sleep sanctuary
where you need to actually create an absolutely serene, meditative, boring, and comfortable space. So take out the electronics. Take your phone out of your pocket, turn it on silent, plug it in, and put it away. Put the alarm on if you need to wake up. Otherwise, just get rid of it out of your space. It's not part of that space. Get rid of lights that are bright. Get rid of electronics that have these little blinking lights. Use tape, something like that. insulate yourself from the world. You should not be awake at night. That's the reason for sleep. It's supposed to be disconnected from the world. So what are the things you need to disconnect from? One is sound. You need to disconnect from sound in some way that allows you to sleep. That's hard, especially if you live in a big city like Denver here, where we have motorcycles in the street, snowblowers, all kinds of stuff. You need to make it so that your brain is not activated by these novelties. So one way you can do that is to create a background sound that covers your nervous system. Your auditory system actually works constantly. It's always on. It's always firing, and even when there's no sound. That's why you sometimes hear that hiss, or what we call tinnitus, over time. That's your background activity of neural patterns. If you can actually raise that background activity by adding a white noise or a pink noise, we call it a biologically comfortable noise, into the background, that actually makes it harder for other noises to actually become noticed and to become novel. So air handling systems, oftentimes people fall asleep in the afternoon at work because of the air handling system makes them sleepy. That's because it's raising that background sound and making it easier for you to disconnect. Other things you can use are white noise machines that provide like natural sounds. I usually call it the 3 W's: water, waves, and what's the other W? Wind. That's it. Okay. Water, waves, and wind. If you can get those three, it actually helps to calm your nervous system, not activate it. You definitely don't want music on. You definitely don't want a television on. You definitely don't want your phone activating. And you don't also want light. So that's the next thing, light. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, that area of the brain, the SCN, is activated by light. It turns on the wake systems and shuts off the sleep systems. Just when you're trying to get to sleep, the last thing you want to do is have light in your face. Yeah. Unfortunately, social media, as it is for us, is a part of everyday life. But it's everyday life, not every night life. So you really need to think about it as not being part of your bedroom. So light, sound, those are the two big ones. And then there are other things that you can actually do for yourself. Make yourself comfortable. So you guys work in the industry of making people comfortable so they can sleep. And that's a very portrayed component. We often suffer through sleep on a mattress we've had for 10 years. And we know that's not accurate. You should not be sleeping on something that's not comfortable. Your sheets should be comfortable. Your pillows should be comfortable. Your bedroom temperature needs to be comfortable. And what we talk about oftentimes from the data and research is that you need a cooler environment. Your body is constantly creating heat. And for those who have bigger bodies, athletes in particular, big like weightlifters, they create a lot more heat. And if you trap that under sheets, you just get hotter and hotter and you don't sleep well. In fact, the cooler your body, and we think under 68 degrees is where most people need to be, that actually increases the chances you'll get that deep non-REM sleep, you'll get that growth hormone production, you'll go through natural cycles. So improving sleep quality is what we're looking for. A number of different products out there have been used by different people for different purposes. We've used cooling blankets. We've used actually toppers on beds that actually push water through those cooling devices. Have been very effective. In fact, I worked with a company that does that. It's actually the granddaughter and grandson, I think, of the original waterbed makers. Okay. They came up with this concept. Nice. And it's a very effective therapy. We used it in our athletes for the Olympics. And some of the bigger body athletes could not sleep without it. And they took it with them to Tokyo. So creating a cool environment, a sound attenuated environment, a dark environment, that's really what you want. And then if you think about having light at night, the only lights that really seem not to impact your sleep are sort of the natural lights, like candles, in that orange, yellow, red spectrum, because it turns out that part of the spectrum has less activity in the central nervous system for wake. That the blue, green, and higher wavelengths towards the ultraviolet range, those are the ones that actually activate the brain much more for wake. If you have to have light, I would suggest reducing it down to those temperature colors, as well as improving your own vision. So if you wear glasses, as I do, to read, use them. If you have vision impairment, get your vision checked and fix it, because the better your acuity, the less light you need, and that also improves your sleep as well.
Okay.
So there's some simple things that people can do in their own environments.
Awesome. And I mean, and you brought it up a little bit on the sleep sanctuary. And, one thing that we pride ourselves of at our company is try to just educate and talk about sleep. But how important, you talked a little bit about mattresses and you talked about pillows.
Yeah.
How important is a mattress and a pillow, and how important is it to find the right one for your body and not...
Yeah, not one size fits all, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
The idea that...
I'm sure you get this question asked all the time. Like,
all
what kind of a bed should I sleep on, doctor?
I've
every
worked
day.
with a number of... I did a research study with a mattress company once, just to see, because they had this novel concept. They're going to put this mattress into the environment. It was over a decade ago, before we had these waffle kinds of mattresses, all different types of mattresses. And, I said, okay, let's test it. Let's see what we put it in our sleep centers in Atlanta. Lo and behold, there were some people that really loved it and others that didn't. Yeah. And it didn't say it was a bad mattress or a good mattress. It just meant that things have to be personalized. Yeah. We're doing that in medicine. We're personalizing medicine based on your genetics, based on your personal needs, your social habits. But we also need to do the same thing for things in your sleep environment, your sleep sanctuary. So just because a memory foam mattress is the most advertised on the television doesn't make it the best bed.
Absolutely.
For some people, it's great for them.
Absolutely.
Others like air mattresses. So a Sleep Number bed works for those people. But there is no one bed for everyone. So you really need to try them out. Go lay on them, talk to people that have used them. I do have some guidance that may help some folks. I mean, if you're a heavier, bigger person that has that sleeping hot issue, you want to find a mattress that actually allows airflow. You want to find a mattress that you don't sink into. So things like memory foam may not be best for bigger body people. And for very light people, for a different reason, they may not be great because they don't get the support. They don't get the same support. So you got to find, is that memory foam good for you? Same thing with an airbed. You can change the pressure on the airbed, but is it comfortable to you? Right. Do you like that? There's a lot of personal choice when it comes to that. I mean, just because silk is smooth doesn't mean it's the best thing for everybody to sleep on. Some people just love a chamois. Some people like cotton. Some people like wool. I don't know those people, but they do. Everybody's different. And I'll tell you one thing. I was a pediatric. I came out of pediatrics initially. That's why I work with a lot of athletes, younger athletes. When you look at kids, kids don't need things like we think they do. Look at what you put in a crib. All you need is a child in a crib. That's it. Swaddle them when they're little, and they get older. Give them one little object that they can use and control as their sleep object. If you add a lot of things to that environment, you make it much, much more difficult for that child to learn to become a self-soother and to sleep. So the requirements for children are very different than for your own requirements as you get older. Just because you like a pillow or three doesn't mean a child should even have a pillow, honestly.
Absolutely.
And you look around the world, there are kids that sleep with their arm as their pillow, others that sleep on the ground, some that sleep on grass mats, some that sleep in hammocks. It really, we've created a standard, if you will, for our bedrooms, our sleep sanctuaries, which really you have to personalize it. You have to make it right for you.
For sure.
Yeah,
well said. And, somewhere probably about a month ago, and I don't want to talk too much about mattresses because I can talk about mattresses all day with you, but we were here at the DNVR bar, and we launched our mattress in a box, and it's the first of its kind. But to your point, what I was trying to solve was that problem where somebody might like latex, somebody else might like memory foam. So the bed that we've created is the first of its kind, but it is a cooling memory foam on one side of it, and then the other side is what we call Snooze Tex, but it is like a latex feel, but it's firm. And then one side's soft, and we've elevated the center third for extra support, and then the cover we've made universal, where it's cold on one side of the cover and warm on the other side of the cover, so you can flip it to either side of the firm or the soft. So it's essentially a 4-bed in one bed. Wow. If you don't like it, flip it over. If it's too hot, flip it over. If it's your color out cold, you want to put the warm side on it, you can flip that over too. So it is the first of its kind. We're very proud of this mattress we're launching, but that was when I thought of it too. It's like there's not such thing as there's only one bed for everybody. Not everybody, but everybody's different. You know what I mean? And we do technology in our stores where we've taken this Mayo Clinic technology where you lay on it, and it tells you there's 30,000 pressure points, and it tells you where all the pressure points are on your body, so we can fit you, through a little bit of technology. It's not just throwing a dart anymore. There's more to that than anything else out there. But so another question for you is the adjustable bases. How do you feel about, like, I know we talk about sleep apnea, we talk about snoring, and sometimes 2 inches, 3 inches, just elevating that head can help in so many different ways. How do you feel about that? How does an adjustable base help somebody?
Snoring is incredibly common. 60% of men snore, 40% of women snore, actually. Not something a lot of women like to talk about.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. That's a
40.
well-known story. 60-40.
Okay.
But that's just snoring. Snoring is a symptom of a lot of potential causes.
Yeah.
You can gain weight and snore. You can drink alcohol and snore. You can lay on your back and snore. And you can lose weight and not snore. You can not drink alcohol and not snore. You can sleep on your side and not snore. So snoring has a lot of potential causes. It comes down to this little kink in our airway that has developed because we are bipeds, not quadrupeds, and our heads are down, and it creates a curve, unlike a dog, which his head is out, or other animals. And we also have a voice box that's mobile, so we can do what we're doing right now, talk. And our communication is really what our species is about.
Yeah.
This communication is very unique to us. I mean, sure, other species definitely communicate and have language, but not like we do. And so having this mobile voice box and a kink in our airway has created this muscular tube that's only supported by muscular activity. So when you go to sleep at night and you lay down and your chin sometimes goes even further down and the kink gets worse, like on your back, that airway not only is now kinked more, it actually sucks itself closed very easily. So from the Adam's apple on up, you're only held open by muscle tone. The muscle tone goes away when you go to sleep. So that's a problem for all of us. That's a human condition. We all have sleep apnea, by the way. Everybody in this room has sleep apnea. You just don't have clinically elevated apnea to the level that it's causing potential disease or disruption of your sleep. It's just part of being a human. It doesn't mean you snore, though, because apnea is the lack of airflow, right? So snoring is an indication that there's airway flexibility and that there's vibration. When you don't hear snoring, that's apnea, when people are collapsing their airway completely. So snoring alone is just one thing that's bothersome to basically bed partners. But apnea is something that affects you medically, and it can affect you over the course of many years without actually knowing it. And it runs in families because we know there are complex genetics behind that. So having a way to relieve snoring or relieve potentially apnea is really is a great opportunity to improve public health. The change in the base of a bed by just elevating the head of bed, it can be effective for those who have what we call positional sleep apnea or positional snoring. So that means the person who's typically on their back snoring and rolls over and doesn't snore, elevating the head of the bed can actually help with that. That's not true in all cases, though. Again, just like mattresses, right?
Yeah.
It's something that affects a slice of the population.
Okay.
In fact, even sometimes when people go on positive airway pressure, CPAP, to actually open the airway with air pressure, which is how we treat sleep apnea in the vast majority of cases. Even in some cases where people have positional apnea and they're using CPAP, we elevate the head of the bed because it makes the airway a little bit easier to open. And it reduces the pressure needs that we have with PAP, which makes the positive airway pressure more tolerable. So there's a lot of benefit in different ways for different people with different conditions. So it's really comes down to what is, as you said, best for you, what's comfortable. Another thing, I mean, if you sit up, you have a bend in your back now, so that may not be comfortable for people with back conditions, or for some folks who don't like to sleep like that. They like to lay out flat. Really have to find the right way to do it. I think the hospital bed effect that we have with this movement of the head of the bed, it can be really helpful. I think even more helpful is actually the entire bed being moved, which is something we call Trendelenburg and reverse Trendelenburg, moving a body slightly prone, the prone body slightly upright, because that improves a lot of other things physiologically, not just moving the head of the bed up, so that your body stays flat, stays in a recumbent position.
How about zero gravity?
Zero gravity, interesting. Yeah, outer space. There's been a lot of research about sleep and positioning in space. It can be very difficult to sleep in space, and I have colleagues at Penn who did a lot of NASA-based work. The problems are that you don't have gravity holding, in a position that actually you're used to. So your muscles are used to, you have gravitational, anti-gravity muscles in your body. Those anti-gravity muscles keep your posture. They're in your back. They're all throughout your body, and they work in very specific ways. In non-gravity space, you don't have the need for that. So they're activating in a different way when you're in space, and you have to adjust, and your body adjusts. But it can be very odd, and sleep disorder breathing definitely can happen.
And they've created like an adjustables on chairs, like the zero gravity position, where the feet are above the heart, helps that blood flow circulation a little bit. The head's just up enough to open up the breathing. That's what we call zero gravity in our field. But I mean, how do you feel about that with the feet and the head? Is that
again depends on the individual?
It
really
does. But you think the full up?
Well, I think it depends on the person, right? Okay. So if we deal with people who have something called orthopnea, which is when they go to sleep at night, they can't lay on their back because they can't breathe, and that can be a sign of congestive heart failure, pulmonologic disease, cardiopulmonary disease, peripheral blood flow, peripheral vascular disease. So actually putting those people into a better position by elevating the head of the bed is very effective for the orthopnea. Now, if you also have peripheral vascular disease and you have edema, you want to get your feet up. But you don't want to do it so that you push all the fluid up to your lungs and you can't breathe. So it really depends on the individual. And just as we all get older, and we have changes to peripheral vascular, as you get older, you don't have the ability to return blood flow as well as you did when you were younger. People use things like tight socks, like we call them pneumatic tets, and things that people put on their legs to improve blood flow. You might see people wearing them on airplanes so they don't get blood clots. You can do that at night. Actually getting the feet up can actually improve that flow of fluid through the body. If you think about it all day, we're upright. Blood flow is going to our feet and away from our head. And it's the heart's job to get 20% of your blood up into your brain. The rest of your blood's going down, is being pulled down dependently. And if you sit down all day at a desk, you may notice your feet swell. That's a normal thing. So when you lay down at night, one of the recovery effects is redistribution of fluids. And the fluids from your legs need to be redistributed through the rest of your body. So you don't want to be completely upright while you're asleep. You do want to be in a more recumbent position.
Makes sense.
And you really have to determine which makes more sense for you depending on the issues you're dealing with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have so many other questions, but I'm going to narrow it down to just a few more questions. Let's talk about naps and power naps. How do you feel about that in this industry of just what is a nap?
Unfortunately, the word power nap came out of the power business culture. And something Arianna Huffington talks about in her book as not so good for her and not so good for us. And she's right. The idea that napping is good or bad is really dependent on what it's doing for you. So there is not such thing as a universally good or bad nap. There are, as I mentioned earlier, with duration, timing, quality. If you look at the quality of your sleep and you're getting good quality, and the timing of your sleep is pretty good, but you're just not getting enough sleep. So student athletes, a perfect example. Wake up early in the morning. My kids were all D1 swimmers. They all had to get up early in the morning to keep their scholarships and swim in the morning, and then they swam again in the afternoon for their second swim of the day. And they had to go to school the entire rest of the time and then figure out, where am I going to do eating? Where am I going to do homework? And I have to travel and I have to compete against these other universities. How do you do all that? Well, honestly, you can't do all that. There's not enough hours in the day and to get enough sleep. And these athletes need more sleep than the rest of us, what we call NARPs, non-athletic regular people. So the kids need at least 9 hours of sleep really to recover, but they can only get 6 or 7 at a time. So what we do is we stick a nap in the circadian lull of the afternoon, that sort of 12 o'clock till 3 o'clock. In the midst of that day, I'd say, just don't take any classes and get a nap. Get a 30, 60, 90-minute nap, no more than that, but just that much sleep so that you can improve your duration so that you get the benefits of enough sleep. So that's a good nap in that sense. A bad nap is one where your quality isn't good. You're snoring, or you're having restlessness or insomnia. You can't shut off that sympathetic brain, and you're not getting enough sleep. Or you're sleeping on these shifts that are all over the place, and your body and brain are not regularly getting the sleep they need. Adding a nap in those cases is really not effective. In fact, it actually kind of covers up the problem of your sleep duration or timing problem. So I oftentimes, I talk to a patient or somebody who naps. I ask them, why do you nap? How often do you nap? Is it something you rely on? And we talk about your caffeine use too, because if you're using a lot of caffeine and taking a nap, that's a red flag. that tells me that you have a problem with your sleep that is now being treated by using caffeine as a drug and taking naps when you probably just need to effectively treat your sleep problem. So not an easy answer, right? It's a little more complicated, but napping itself is something
that makes sense, because some people are more tired after naps. Some people can get a quick nap and feel regenerated, and it's but it's not a simple.
So it's not a simple answer. And then there are also people that actually have what we call hypersomnolence disorders, the actual medical disorders like narcolepsy, idiopathic hypersomnolence, where their wake systems, there's a sleep system and a wake system. The wake system's not working well, and so they take naps without any trouble, but they don't really feel very refreshed, or they're going through REM cycles when they shouldn't be going through REM cycles in the middle of the day. So there's a lot of different issues with naps that need to be peeled. It's like the onion. Everything in sleep is like an onion. You got to peel down to the basic core, find out what the actual root cause of the problem is. Because you may be sitting across somebody who talks about naps who has narcolepsy, somebody across the couch who has apnea, somebody who's a student athlete. There's a whole bunch of different causes for a nap being needed. But there is no one good or bad nap in that I do say that the concept of power nap is a lousy concept, and I think we should throw that one out of our culture, because it comes from this sense that a little bit of sleep like that is all I need, and it undervalues the actual sleep you get at night. And I think that that's something we should talk about as a culture, that power napping is really it's a name we've given something that is probably not deserved.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
So one thing that we do is, or we've created is our 504 club, and it is people that get up really, like you said, the people that get up and grind, and our 4 pillars to that, and that's why we say 504 is health, wealth, family, and self. And it is, everybody thinks of those 4 things as completely something different. You can think of family differently if you have a big giant family, or if you have just close friends. Wealth can be money, it could be something completely different. But what does health, wealth, family, and self mean to you? Because it's the pillars of our company.
Wow. Okay. Well, health, I mean, honestly, that's, to me, if you don't have mental health, you don't have health. So to me, you've got to find a way to see your way through this life that is something that is reverberates with your core values, that you feel appreciated for, that you feel has meaning, because honestly the meaning of life is that meaning and purpose. So that's, to me, health. I mean, the physical part of it, absolutely, but it starts with mental health. The wealth part of it is comfort, making yourself comfortable, but not too comfortable. One of the problems of modern culture is we become too comfortable. And I've heard this from different philosophical views, and I agree with them. The idea that comfort actually is the opposite, it keeps you from evolving. It keeps you from inventing. It keeps you from being the best that you can be. If you're always comfortable, you're really not striving. The idea that you should do something every day that makes you uncomfortable, or something that scares you, is a good concept.
Amen.
Because that's what really drives your ability. So to me, wealth is great to a point, but you really need to not make yourself so comfortable that you're always comfortable. It's just not a decent concept in my mind.
I love that. I actually love it.
What's the other 2? Family? Oh, well, I mean, that's where you came from. So, family is what you make it. It's not just who you're related to and who was your mom and dad. There are a lot of people that have great support from mom and dad and great support from their family. And there are folks that had the worst experience on earth and escaped their families. So family to me is a broad concept. And I respect the concept of family for individuals, no matter what they call family. My wife came from Costa Rica. Her family is in Costa Rica. Her family emigrated here when she was 5 years old. She's a dreamer, in a sense, a little older than most dreamers, but that's something that she didn't have a great family experience, coming from a different culture that didn't speak the language, that lived in a part of the country that wasn't accepting of her culture, and then being placed in between the two cultures, a very conservative Hispanic culture in a very modern world. So her family is what we've created, and that's a different kind of family. So Yeah, family to me is really the friends and the group that you create that are your tribe, we'll say. And so
Love it.
creating your tribe is it's a process of life, in my mind.
Very well said. And the last one is self.
Self? Well, look, you have to be careful that your ego doesn't take over self, that you're connected to your family, your tribe, and you're connected to your purpose. Just because you may be eloquent and on a podcast doesn't make you better than anybody else. You have to recognize that you're a part of a whole, and that we're in this all together. And self is supported by your family. It's supported by your purpose. It's sort of a reflection of all those other things in my mind. It's not something that is aggrandized by itself.
Yeah. Love it. So well said on all of those right there. And it's just, it's amazing how different everybody's answers on this. But
I'm sure they are.
It is. And I
everybody
love that.
comes from a different walk of life.
Amen to that. I've there's so many things that I'd love. We're working on so many different inventions on sleep and different things for white noises and stuff that I want to talk to you about off the topic here. But what can we look forward to from this audience? What are you up to? We know you're up to a lot of things because you're traveling to Antarctica. You think you just told me?
Oh, not Antarctica. No, nobody goes there.
Where are you going?
Iceland.
Iceland. That's where you said. Antarctica. Was just that's somebody I was just talking to the other day. But Iceland, you're traveling to Iceland. You've just came back from all over the place. You're up to something. What do we look forward to with what you're doing right now?
So as I mentioned earlier, our company Knox Health it's one of the largest. I think it probably is. I can say safely the largest population sleep health company in the United States. But it's also international. So part of our company is in Reykjavik, Iceland, and that's where our engineers who create the devices that we use to study sleep quality for the medical FDA cleared audience in healthcare lives. And we've got one of the most worldwide well-used home-based sleep testing systems around. So I'm going to Iceland. We're working on a whole new concept with our company, which is really not a whole new concept. It's basically the idea of providing as many people as we can get access to sleep healthcare. We're trying to create that, and we're doing it through telemedicine. We're doing it through a telehealth approach. We're doing it with companies directly with their big populations. We work with some of the largest companies on earth. Some things that are household names that I can't name because they don't want us to name things, but some that we can name, like Delta Airlines. How about that?
Okay.
But there's a lot of folks out there that get healthcare in different ways, and we're trying to make it possible for folks to get sleep health, which I think is the missing link in U.S. healthcare, honestly. Get sleep health introduced into the beginning of your healthcare, not something that you find a specialist at the end when you have heart disease and now you need to treat your sleep apnea. We need to treat it before you have heart disease. So our company's really invested in developing new technologies using machine learning, AI, and also doing systematic research on our own delivery systems to improve that, to personalize your sleep health in a way that just isn't done. And as our medical groups around the country know, sleep is sort of a tiny little specialty. It's only a tiny little laboratory in a big hospital system, but it's a major part of everyone's health.
Absolutely.
So we need to broaden this out to the masses. We need to bring sleep health into your home, and that's what we're doing. We're bringing all of sleep health into the home, including testing, including therapies, including all of these things like rings and watches that you can use. Let's make those part of your program. Let's not divorce them from medical care. Let's bring them into medical care. So that's what I'm doing there. On the other side of my life, sort of that's my full-time job as the chief medical officer of that company that we started. The other thing I do is I work with high-performance groups, and I continue to work with the U.S. Olympic team. I'm really hoping through the work that we did and the success we had with the Olympic weightlifting team, building a circadian camp, which I like to call it, in Hawaii before people went to Tokyo to get them trained and ready for that event, that we can actually use that concept for the larger Olympic team, not just for one team at a time, as our Olympic programming in the United States is very separate and very specific to each sport. We don't actually do a lot as a single country, unlike countries like Canada, which actually there's a sleep program for all Olympic athletes. I would love to see that happen here because it's something that will capture the imagination of the American public, and not just for the success of the Olympics, but really for the success of our culture, because our culture is on that edge of sleep deprivation. Absolutely. And it's causing disease, it's causing problems. I want to capture the imagination of the American public so that we can change that issue. and the Olympics is one avenue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we'll be chatting again sometime. I mean, one of our missions is definitely to help people sleep. And with Snooze Mattress Company, we're going nationwide right now. We've got stores opening all over the place. But we have our first franchise training next week, actually, in Little Pueblo, Colorado right now. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about is sleep and how to educate other people on sleep. So I definitely appreciate your time. How do we find you? I know you're on LinkedIn. Where else are we going to find you? How do we find your story and how do we continue to find what's going on?
The best way to find me is probably through Knox Health. That's the easiest way to get me. If you go to the Knox Health website, there's also a website called Sleep Charge, which is actually one of the programs that we've created for self-insured employers. Okay. You can find me through the website. You can find me there very easily. You can send in questions to our company, knoxhealth.com. It's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me as well. And anything through LinkedIn if you want to check me out there, and we can
You're not on
chat.
Instagram or Facebook or any of that stuff?
I stay away from those sorts of things. Yeah, I actually have a whole... That's a whole nother...
That's another
hour-long conversation. Yes, but yes, I limit my exposure. Yes.
I love that. I love that. So, as I close, I mean, you are on the Dream Big podcast, where we are. Our goal is to go around the world and tell the stories of people like yourself that are dreaming big. And you're not only dreaming big, but you're helping other people dream big, literally, physically, and all around that. But what does dream big mean to you?
Wow. Well,
last question.
What dream big means to me is kind of what I said just before, which is getting sleep understood. That my mission here in life is, if I can get the American culture to reverse this sleep deprivation construct and start to value sleep as a part of day-to-day life, we're not only going to have a healthier population, we're going to have a wealthier population, we're going to have a happier population, and we're going to treat each other better. I mean, one of the things I've seen in the last, as we've all seen in the last 5-6 years, is division in this country.
Yeah.
I wonder why division is like the way we go. And I think one of the things that could be contributing to it is sleep deprivation. So let's get rid of the sleep deprivation. Let's not look at each other as them. Let's look at each other as us. So I look at it as a way to bring the country together and to bring people together. That's the way I look at sleep.
You're a great man. I appreciate that. So you heard it here from the DNVR studio. Dr. Jeffrey Durmer. This guy is, in my opinion, and probably a lot of others' opinion, the sleep doctor of the world. I mean, you really, truly, thank you for your time today. Thank you for all you do for society. Thank you for what you're doing for the world and how you're making the world a better place. And thanks for taking the time today. I know you're a busy man. So
my pleasure, Matt. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And you heard it here on the Dream Big podcast, where our goal is to travel the world and find the biggest dreamers out there and help you learn their story and tell their story. Stay tuned for our next episode.